So, Lewis Wall, you can
Thank
talk
you,
about
Mr.
anything
Chair.
within the bill now.
I appreciate that. I'm rising to support the Health Practitioners Replacement of Statutory References to Medical Practitioners Bill in the committee stage. What I wanted to highlight was that of the 28 submissions that we received, only 2 were opposed. And they're not that surprising. Well, the first one isn't, because it was the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists. And their major opposition was that health practitioners should be doctors in undertaking statutory duties. And in fact, that's the whole thrust or intent of this piece of legislation. It is to recognise scopes of practice that health practitioners who have the required competencies and knowledge should be able to perform those statutory functions. And why did we, as a select committee, or why has the Minister proposed this legislation? Actually, it's pretty simple. It's because we want to maximise the skills and the competencies of our workforce, and particularly, as my colleague Jenny Salisa intimated, within a context of shortages. So those shortages actually have been highlighted by the 2015 voluntary bonding scheme, where general practice has been highlighted as a shortage, general surgery, pathology, psychiatry, and rural hospital medicine. And so these changes are actually very good changes, because they're trying to create a fit-for-purpose health system that recognises such qualifications as nurse practitioners, who will be able to sign sick leave forms, death certificates, take blood, also authorise optometrist certificates, all those sorts of things that currently only doctors can undertake. There was one other person who was opposed to this piece of legislation, and it was a person called Tamblyn Davenport. And it was interesting because their primary opposition was in relation to the Mental Health Compulsory Assessment and Treatment Act of 1992. The changes that were proposed in this legislation to that specific act, they said would affect their civil rights. Now, obviously, there were advisors to the Select Committee, and we haven't, as far as I know, made any amendments that specifically address, but it was just interesting to note that that's where the opposition came from. In terms of those who supported the submissions from the submitters, nurses and nursing organisations, so the Nurse Practitioners Organisation, the Nursing Council, neonatal nurses, mental health nurses, 100% support this piece of legislation. There was always also good support from the pharmacy sector, from physiotherapy, and also the Public Service Association. And so I think, having sat on the Select Committee during the beginning of this process and hearings from the submitters, generally, I think most people agree that this legislation is about time. Some people have been waiting for it for a long time, but it's good to see that the Minister and the Government has introduced a piece of legislation that we can stand up and support. And really, I don't have anything more to add. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Members, the Porter Williams.
Mr.